Femi, for that background report. And in the studio here to discuss the issue, we have Aliyu Abdullahi. Aliyu is a legal practitioner and public affairs analyst. I thank you for joining us this morning, Aliyu.
Thank you for having me.
And of course, Kingsley Jide Ojo, he's a public affairs analyst. In fact, I'd like to call him Good Morning Nigeria analyst.
Yes, that's right. One of our regular analysts. Gentlemen, let's begin this conversation. In your opinion, after the Code of Conduct Tribunal passed its decision yesterday on Chief Justice Walter Onnoghen, what are the matters arising?
Well, the matters arising, you had, of course, the judicial correspondent out there. The former CGN will actually go for appeal. I think he has already filed it. I have seen some of the motion flying all over. But at least for the CCT, that brings the matter to conclusion. We knew the processes when it started, how it has come to be, and the judgment, for example. And in my own opinion, actually, I feel the CCT in this case, in this instance, I think they did well, bearing in mind their constitutional responsibility, and the charges that were placed on the doorsteps of the former CGN. What were the charges? It's failure to declare assets. Did he actually declare those assets, or did he fail to do that? Well, we had an admission, earlier in time, even before he faced the Code of Conduct Tribunal, that yes, he admitted not to have actually done that. And even during the testimony of the Code of Conduct Bureau officials, it was found that actually many years, even before he actually assumed his present position, or the position he's just vacating, that he didn't actually declare some of those assets. And that is what led, for example, to the forfeiture. One of the penalties that the CCT is empowered to administer, on persons that are found with this. The two other issues, the defendant was contending, was the issue of jurisdiction of the court to try him as a certain CGN at that material time, whether in view of the powers of the NJC under the Constitution, they have that jurisdiction to hear him, to try him. He felt the tribunal didn't actually do well in that. They ought to have adjudicated or decide the issue of jurisdiction before going into the full trial. But what the tribunal chairman did was to suspend giving judgment on that until after the trial, which he actually did. He found that the tribunal has jurisdiction, that the case of Nganjua, the Court of Appeal decision, where a judge can only avail himself to a trial, a criminal trial, only if NJC disciplinary measures or process were followed, was found to be, by the tribunal, not to apply in this instant case, because he is there he is on this trial in his capacity as a public officer, not necessarily as a judicial officer. If the offenses are bordered on his capacity as a judicial officer, then Nganjua will have applied, meaning the National Judicial Council will have to decide on his matter, disciplinary matter first, before any courts will have tried him. So we wait to see also whether the decision of the CCT will be upheld on appeal. In my own opinion, I feel it's a sound judgment. The third issue was about the issue of bias against the chairman of the CCT, that he should recuse himself. And the chairman found no evidence of bias. Like he said, even if you are thinking that I have a case with the EFCC have dropped charges, so they have no way to muzzle me, to influence my decision. And I feel that is also one area that, because it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, whoever comes there, an accused person or a defendant will always have a sense of this biasness, because the person will have to be appointed at the end of the day, whoever assumes the chairmanship, by the executive. So if you feel, for example, you didn't get a fair deal from the executive, whoever comes there is still going to be appointed by the executive at the end of the day.
Yeah. Oh, okay, thank you, Ali, for that explanation. But let's turn to Jide Ojo. Jide, you have followed this legal tussle right from the beginning, and I've also been opportunity to air your views on this matter, not just on NTA, but other media outlets. So you have a grasp of what that situation is all about. You know, before, yeah, it was time limited yesterday. Now, what are the, the matters arising from your own perspective?
Well, the procedural issue was what was first in contention in January. You know, this whole episode started on January 14th when there was a petition by a civil society organization to the CCT, and in a record time, CCT, filed charges, and on 17th of January, he was asked to come to the tribunal, and everybody was worried about the speed of light with which all of this was happening. But having said that, of course, on the 25th of January, the CGN, Walter Onnoghen, was suspended, and Justice Ibrahim Tanko was appointed in acting capacity. And of course, I actually criticized that at the beginning, but given the benefit of hindsight and the fact that, yes, procedurally, there may have been, as my learned colleague has pointed out, if you were to be tried as a judicial officer, there should have been a petition directed to the NJC. The NJC should have set up a disciplinary committee. But even as at that time, there was this information in public domain that the NJC meeting that was supposed to be held in January was postponed indefinitely by the CGN. And that, robbed him of the opportunity to even tell his colleagues in the NJC about what the issues, matters arising was. And everybody was like worried. Why did you have to suspend this meeting indefinitely? And at some point, the other alternative was about 5 members of the NJC to call for a meeting. Don't forget, along the line, NJC itself got petitions and decided to set up a disciplinary committee, which reported to the president about a week or 2 ago about their findings. And one of the findings that was in public domain was for the CGN to I think either compulsory retirement or to resign. Now, officially, the presidency has not even responded on his purported resignation or retirement or whatever. But he himself, having had, and I believe in my own estimation, it's an admission of guilt when you stayed put from January through to April, and just a day after the NJC submitted the reports to the presidency, you now threw in the towel and said you are going on retirement. Why didn't you avail yourself of that opportunity since January? I believe it was buying time to see whether the NJC's disciplinary committee will exonerate him of whatever wrongdoings he was alleged to have committed. But having thrown in the towel, it is to short-circuit whatever will come from the CCT. Because at the end of the day, the decision from the CCT was issue vacate office, which he will say he has already done, which means he has put the rug off the feet of whatever is coming from NJC. 2, issue forfeit. And the crux of the matter, even though I believe there was initially procedural error, the point is, did he actually, by error of omission or commission, fail to declare those assets, those 5 accounts, which purported huge sums of money in there? As a chief law officer, as a number one judicial officer, should that have escaped your memory to say, oh, I have this account with this amount of money and I should, because if the front us is the one the back one used to pace, if you as the chief judicial officer fails to declare your asset in truth and indeed, and this is something you did on oath, should that be taken as an omission or a commission? So for me, that is number one. If somebody like me does that, we can say, oh, it's just an ordinary Nigerian. But for somebody who will sit in judgment on other people, I don't think that is a very good excuse to say, oh, I forgot to declare those assets. Was it deliberately done or was it done out of mischief? Now, two, matters arising. It shows that henceforth, every public official should take their issue of asset declaration very seriously. Hitherto, people just, in fact, they will ask their clerk and their aide to just fill the form for them, believing that nobody will bother to cross-check. But it is not very clear. And, you know, when people accuse the CCT chairman of bias, the same CCT chairman, even in the face of pressure, exonerated Senate president last year of the same false asset declaration that everybody believed was a witch hunt against the Senate president. I mean, if it were to be a witch hunting, it should have convicted, because there was a lot of intense pressure. In fact, you know, when Saraki was at the CCT, every day there is a sitting. At least no less than 20 senators were accompanying, which is more like intimidating. But he exonerated the man. Now he has found Justice Onnoghen culpable. Let's see what happens on appeal. But I think this is a lesson for all public officials to take their issue of asset declaration very seriously.
All right, Jo, thank you very much, as well as Ali Abdullahi. Well, you know, Kyria, there's some challenge with this issue because, you know, there was a lot of media trial at the beginning, but now that decision has been given by the Code of Conduct Tribunal, the guests can, of course, explore the issue. I'm just wondering, Ali Abdullahi, there are a number of legal matters, if are relating to our jurisprudence, but let's try and narrow it down for the benefit of our viewers. The issue in the public domain, I've not had the benefit of reading the full judgment, apart from the reports that have been published, you know, since yesterday. Is it necessarily the case, on the basis of what was reported while the trial was on, that Justice Onnoghen failed totally to declare his assets, or that it was a question of timing? That at some point, you know, I think with difference of 2014 or so, we didn't declare those accounts, but by 2016, he made a declaration of those accounts. That's one. And secondly, there was also the testimony by one of the prosecution witnesses that this Code of Conduct Bureau had in fact not verified the assets declaration. So, can there therefore be, I mean, again, this is by way of analysis, can there therefore be an issue arising when the CCB itself had not verified? If I make a claim, it is for the CCB to verify. That's one leg of it.
Yeah, very actually correct. I think this also kind of puts it out there to the notice of the Nigerian people, you know, also the need for the government to really equip the CCB, because it seems that they are really kind of under-equipped or actually understaffed to actually carry out its mandate fully. I read about that issue of non-verification, but you see, here is the thing. When you are dealing with the law is the law, you know, and the law requires, as a public officer, when you actually assume a position, even as civil servant, not to talk about appointees and public officers, that you have to declare what you have. Not only you personally, your wife, your children, you do that. I was a public officer once before. I have done a number of times, you know. Every 4 years, you do that. So it is one thing to now come and say those assets you declared were not even verified by the Code of Conduct Bureau. That's a totally different matter. But fundamentally, you haven't satisfied with the requirement of the law by not declaring them in the first place. So for me, it goes to no issue at least with regards to Justice Onnoghen's case, that the Code of Conduct Bureau didn't even verify the assets, that is a different matter entirely, because he has failed to do what is right by the law. So that's on that one. The second issue that you mentioned, I think, was with regards to if maybe partial declaration. Maybe he has declared sometime and then he did it. Again, the same thing applied. The law didn't require partial declaration. It requires at all the time when you are declaring it, every 4 years, you have to declare fully. And that is the problem here. He didn't do it. If you do it, the form will show so. So if later the government traces any assets that you fail to declare within the period that you are actually under the service of the country, you can't actually get this kind of treatment that we have seen the judgment. What are the implications of the judgment? Now, he's like Jide said, he stands, vacated from the office. And this vacation is not like resignation or retirement. It means he will not actually be entitled with all the benefit that comes as a former Justice of the Supreme Court, and especially CJN for that matter. And there are so much we're not even talking about the pecuniary benefits. We're talking about he could have been member of the Council of State and other things. But now, zero. He won't get those unless if he has this guilty verdict obtained at the appeal or any other process in the front.
Yeah, let me just, again, I know, Kira, you are itching. Jide, I know that you will take a look at it from a broader perspective. But just also take this along before we get to the Good Friday conversation, the legal perspective. We've already dealt with one aspect of it and the consequences, for instance, of him being removed from office. In our jurisprudence, that's to say our legal system, stare decisis, the rule of precedence, is upheld. When the Code of Conduct Tribunal says that it is reversing itself, what does that mean? Because the interpretation is that is the Code of Conduct Tribunal, are its proceedings now also sui generis? Is it, is it a court of first instance, also an appellate court? Because ordinarily, it is the higher court that can reverse your decision, and then you move on to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court itself, to reverse itself on its decisions, has laid down procedures and rules for doing that. But the Code of Conduct Tribunal ruled yesterday that no, it is reversing itself on the basis of what went on before in Ngajiwa, and then Unguta, who was also a justice of the Supreme Court. So what does this mean to somebody who is looking at the Nigerian legal system and saying that the Code of Conduct can reverse itself? Can it reverse itself at every turn and twist?
Yes, and this is why. They could, if they found that their earlier decision was actually done in error or an oversight, they can actually reverse itself. And they didn't reverse itself on Nganjua. Nganjua is still good. It has stood the test of time. It's a different case, if you are charged with corruption as a judge, that's not a failure of asset declaration. You have to go through the NJC because it has to do with your functions as a judicial officer. That is Nganjua. So that is not the case there. But Unguta, that is true. Yes, the CCT ruled at that time that they lack jurisdiction, even though it's a asset declaration case. But I feel their earlier decision in Unguta was actually an erroneous one. And now they are correcting themselves. You don't have to be a judge, a court of appellate jurisdiction before you can actually reverse yourself. Any court can actually reverse itself. What it cannot do is to reverse a binding case decision.
So Unguta isn't binding on it.
No. For itself, for the CCT, their own decision, they can reverse it.
Are talking, and they're taking us, into, the biases, in the legal system. And I want to tell you this, that, there are lacunas in our legal procedures, and that is why even SANs and knowledgeable judges and people, luminaries in the legal profession, keep arguing about what is written down on the Constitution. And that baffles people like me as to whether people cannot sit down and identify the issues where they are. And again, Jide, let me come to you for final analysis. Now, I think the judgment on Onnoghen, has actually thrown up the issue of integrity in the judicial system in this country. But let's look at the role the NJC played, in this legal saga. Because at the beginning, many Nigerians, including professionals, SANS, were arguing, that the CCT, the CCT ought not to have given an order to the president to suspend Onnoghen when it had not written to the NJC. And now, in the long run, NJC now resurfaced and came up with their own rule on the matter.
No, that was on the basis of the petition that Jide referred to. Now, part of the issue that also came up, I'm sorry, I'm jumping in, that the CCT says, look, it doesn't report to the NJC. It doesn't also report to the Federal Judicial Service Commission. But here is a catch, and this is the lacuna you referred to. The president doesn't appoint the chairman of the CCT from the street. The chairman of the CCT is appointed on the basis of the recommendation of the NJC.
But it's not binding that NJC's recommendation will be taken by the president, from what I know. The NJC is not binding on the president.
No, it's a recommendation because you have to have the qualifications of a lawyer.
So let's hear from Jide on the
but I want to comment on that.
No. Sorry. We give Jide an opportunity to respond. Yes.
Our laws are not perfect, and that's why there is a lot of agitation for constitutional reform. I recall that my Lanesik Awomolo addressed press about 2 weeks ago, showing the lacuna in even the CCT being an administrative court under the presidency, when all courts should ordinarily be under the judicial arm of government. This CCT and CCB happens to be under the executive arm. And Awomolo was advocating that there should be constitutional amendment that will ensure that every court, and incidentally, Justice Onnoghen, I think in 2013 or thereabout, actually gave a ruling that to the effect that, affirming the power and authority of CCT.
Exactly.
So what goes around comes around. You cannot in one breath say you recognize CCT and it has disciplinary action. You can take disciplinary action on a public servant, and then you now turn around and want the protection of NJC. And the point is, did Onnoghen even get the protection of NJC that he was seeking? Because if the NJC at the end of the day, after setting up his own disciplinary committee, arising from those petitions that were submitted to it, found a prima facie case against Onnoghen as to have recommended to the president, which has not been refuted, that he should vacate office, then it shows that the man, even within his own folks in the judiciary, has lost the respect and the command and control of the judicial arm of government. Because otherwise, he was waiting, hoping to see whether there will be a variance in the opinion that will be held by NJC. If it were to be honorable, I'm sure that as at yesterday would have been, he would not have vacated his office. So by and large, I agree with you that there are serious challenge and lacuna in our law. And now that we have opportunity to rectify, people are calling for a process-led constitutional, new constitution.
Now, in a word or two, should Onnoghen have eaten the humble pie of resigning at the initial stage, in your opinion?
That's what I feel. If in his conscience he felt that, look, I'm a cog in the wheel of this judiciary, and we are in the eye of the storm. I mean, look at the news all over the world. Nigeria is the first time, it's unprecedented, that a Chief Justice of Nigeria will be removed. I mean, the people will talk about Teslim Elias in the 60s or 70s. But that is a different ball game. It's not on the issue of that borders like a answer declaration on corruption.
Jide, of course, we can continue with this conversation and rolling on and on. Just hold on a second, Aliu. Of course, we'll have to return to this on Good Morning Nigeria to explore the further amplitude of all of these matters, because we have a number of tweets that have also come in. There are a number of issues, as I said, Ali, I know that you are itching, to respond. If you, there are cross-cutting issues that have come up. The issue of sequencing, when should the NJC have acted? NJC began acting when the matter was already before the CCT. Now the CCT, the contention. Yeah, hold on a second. The contention was that look, no, let the NJC finish theirs, and then the CCT can then also come in. But these are matters, as I said, that we will expand the panel of discussants going forward, so that viewers will have the benefit of
be able
it.
to establish the fact that lawyers you will have a lot of jobs to do.
All right, Kira, let's go very quickly now to our tweets. So we'll bridge them. Law Alpha says the arraignment, prosecution, and conviction of Justice Onnoghen only translates to the fact that the anti-corruption campaign of the present administration is real and that there is no sacred cow. Now, the present challenge before this administration and judiciary is to prove that there is no ethnic angle to the conviction of Justice Onnoghen by making sure that all those anti-corruption cases involving all persons, despite who they are handled with dispatch.
And from Mayaki Mushut, he says, Justice Onnoghen's conviction is an eye-opener and a giant stride towards achieving equity before the law in Nigeria. Whether it was politically motivated or not, it is already a precedent in Nigeria's administration of criminal justice. If Onnoghen can go down this way, then other people in the authority will have to buckle up. It's indeed a milestone in our anti-corruption crusade.
Festus Akimboyewa, the conviction of Justice Onnoghen shows that the cleansing of our judiciary, an important arm of government, has started.
All right, now from Alhaji Musa Muhammad Hadejia, the sacking of erstwhile CJN and forfeiting of illegal funds and not being declared to the Code of Conduct Bureau is a welcome development to our country, and it shows that nobody is above the law. The conviction of Walter Onnoghen will be a lesson to those who think they are above the law. Let me stop there.
All right, Mike Ayankwa tweet says the conviction of Justice Onnoghen shows that nobody is above the law. Again, all other cases on corruption should be speedily treated and resolved immediately.
Shaibu Alkali, CCT shows that nobody is above the law. Conviction of number one judiciary in the judiciary would make other judges and lawyers to be careful. Also, knowing judiciary officers with corruption, it gives room for others. Let judiciary not to be. I didn't get this because it's not correctly put together. I think he's actually just saying that the judiciary should buckle up.
Now, Josh tweets, Nigerians wish that this kind of judgment can be replicated across the political class without partisan politics.
Dilejak Solomon, please can your guests explain to Nigerians if the federal government violated established judicial precedents by not allowing the National Judicial Council, NJC, to firstly investigate the allegation against Justice Onnoghen before it rushed the matter to the CCT.
Okay, now Alhaji Ngala tweets, now nobody's above the law. The Nigerian justice system has become a role model. This is a lesson to public servants. All right, those are the tweets that we can accommodate in the meantime. As we said, this is a subject matter we'll return to at some point. Ali Abdullahi, lawyer and public affairs analyst, I'd like to thank you for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria today.
Thank you for having me.
We also would like to appreciate Jide Ojo, regular analyst on Good Morning Nigeria. Jide, thanks a lot and enjoy your weekend. All right, it's Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. We take a break now. When we return, it's Good Friday, and we'll be talking about the significance of the season.